Hi folks, and welcome to this presentation, How to Photograph Strangers. I'm Glenn Guy, your travel photography guru. When approaching strangers, it's important, except in the case of cultural sensitivities, whether they be yours or theirs, to ask for permission in a clear and straightforward manner. You may find it helpful to state your name and the reason for wanting to make the picture. It's always a good idea to include a compliment as part of your request. For example, "Hi, my name's Glenn. I'm on holidays and noticed the wonderful hat you're wearing. We don't have anything quite like that where I'm from. I'd really appreciate it if you'd allow me to make a photograph." Or alternatively, you might try, "Hi, my name's Glenda. I'm a student photographer studying at the Arcanum, an amazing online education experience, and this week's challenge is to photograph artists and their artwork. I noticed your gallery from across the street, and now that I've seen your exhibition, I'd be honoured if you'd allow me to photograph you with one of your paintings." These are just a couple of possibilities that may help you approach and gain permission to photograph a stranger. Of course, there has to be something in it for the subject, but that shouldn't be a concern, as by saying you're a student, you've already downplayed your importance and the potential usage of the photos you produce. The subject should now not be concerned about their image appearing in an advertising campaign, and as a consequence, they are less likely to expect any more from you than your company and an interesting experience while you make their image. That is, of course, if there is no chance you will be publishing the image for profit. If there is a chance that the image could be used in an advertising context, you would be wise to secure permission to reproduce their likeness through a formal model release. None of us should exclude our own attractiveness from those we wish to photograph. We are at least as exotic to our subjects as they are to us. I found this belief tremendously empowering in my own photographic endeavours. Imagine meeting me. I'm hilarious. My appearance, often loaded down with camera equipment, has provided local folk, whether in an Asian village or in an exclusive Melbourne club or restaurant, with a fun and interesting diversion. I believe I am bringing into their lives something greater than what they would otherwise be experiencing. Why wouldn't they want to meet me and have their picture made? And if this mindset works for me, why wouldn't it work for you? So when approaching strangers looking to make their photograph, I think it's important to remain inconspicuous. You don't want to really advertise yourself, because if they see you walking down the road with a Mickey Mouse camera strap or a Canon or Nikon camera strap, maybe a fancy camera bag, it can actually make people a little uncertain and a little bit uncomfortable. So my approach would be generally to attach the camera to a wrist strap, or if you have a neck strap, possibly just consider wrapping the strap around your wrist and just holding the camera in your hand. I think it's important to keep the camera constantly ready, particularly if you're looking to make candid photographs. Always be thinking beforehand about focus, your light meter readings, your exposure, depth of field, etc. Don't advertise yourself as a photographer, particularly don't advertise yourself as a professional photographer. It's much better to disarm people by suggesting that you're an enthusiast. How to ask permission to take someone's photograph? I think it's important to project an air of confidence and control. The reverse would see you coming across as a little bit, potentially sleazy. You certainly need to speak in a direct, clear and uncomplicated manner. And if it's helpful, mention that you're a student photographer, for instance, an apprentice at the Arcanum. Rejection. When photographing strangers, it's important to accept a refusal for what it is. Not a personal rebuttal, insult or negative reaction to you as a person, but an indication of how your potential subject feels on the day in question. It may be that business is bad, that they are unwell, or that they've just had an argument with their partner. Alternatively, they may never have had the good fortune of being photographed in such a way to produce a pleasing likeness. They don't know that you're a good photographer. They've only had bad photographs of them made in the past. How would you feel and respond if approached in a similar manner? The type of things that can go against you when you're looking to photograph strangers would be your own mood and the way you approach subjects, their state of mind, and their past experiences. Think about retailers in busy markets frequented by tourists, dealing with constant streams of photographers. It can't be an easy experience for them. And as soon as they see someone with a big fancy camera, well, they've already made up their mind, haven't they? So if you want a higher success rate when approaching strangers, pick the right stranger to approach. In the beginning, it's not uncommon to make poor decisions and ask the wrong people. You'll be attracted to them like magneto is to metal. After a while, you'll get a little bit smarter, a little bit more canny about who to approach. As you approach them, you'll be assessing them and determining whether they're the kind of person on that particular day who's likely to grant you permission. If they're not, avoid them. Keep moving. What happens when a potential subject declines to be photographed? Well, it's important not to be upset by the rejection because it's going to happen from time to time, more so in the early days. But neither should you expect or accept that rejection without considering how to avoid such a response the next time around. Use it as an incentive to handle the situation better next time. Every time you make a great photograph of another person, everybody wins. I think it's important to remember that. However, once you have permission, don't walk away after the first photo. It's the beginning, not the end of the process. Aim to make at least 6 images. You've done the hard work by gaining their permission. Now use the opportunity to fully explore the available photographic options. Approaches will differ from photographer to photographer, but for me, I would generally not hold people up for more than 2 minutes, to get those 6 photos. I'm pretty much out of there and on my way. That's not always the case. If they're particularly happy to be photographed, I'll often engage with them a little bit longer and maybe look for different backgrounds that may highlight the clothing they've got, for instance, colour contrast between the clothing they're wearing and the background. There's lots of different reasons why you might want to continue photographing people, but if you've seen them, the light's good where they are, the composition looks good, their relationship with the background is good, well, get in there, make a few quick adjustments, make your photographs and get out. The reason for the 6 shots is really just to give you an opportunity to ensure you've got the right expression, the right gesture, and maybe the opportunity to make 1 or 2 fine adjustments with exposure. Personally, a breakthrough came for me when I became outcome focused. Now, I'm not just talking about satisfying my ego by making the best photos I can. I'm referring to the underlying reasons I do what I do. You could call it a mission statement if you like. I'm all about making beautiful photos of people and places outside of my normal everyday experience. That's fundamental to who I am and what I do. It's why I do what I do. And then sharing those images with an ever wider audience via my website and blog, travelphotographyguru.com. It's that very fact that gives me the courage to approach strangers, to engage with them, to make a photograph that's beautiful, and then to walk away elated after that experience. Also knowing that because I'm so enthusiastic throughout the process, that the people I've engaged with have also gained from the experience. And of course, the more often you do it, the better at it you become. You know the joke, a young girl's walking down the street in New York City and she says to an old man sitting on a bench, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me the way to Carnegie Hall?" And he replies, "Practice, practice, practice." A warning for the compassionate photographer. Sometimes our subject becomes very interested in us, and while it's great to meet and talk with people, remember your objective. Don't get stuck for an extended period of time unless you're very comfortable doing so. Otherwise, you'll miss the very opportunity your courage created for you in the first place. The wonderful French photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson's decisive moment is, after all, based both on keen observation and an ability to react as the moment unfolds in real time. The decisive moment is therefore a creation of the photographer. So my warning for folks that tend to over-engage with their subject at the potential loss of making more great pictures is this: engage, interact, photograph, and move on. And if that entire experience can occur within 2 minutes, that's pretty good when you're photographing strangers. Move on and start the process again. Heal the world one photo at a time. You'd be amazed how having a reason for doing what you do can motivate you to action. The courage you'll find will not only make it easy to approach strangers, it will further motivate you to make the best images you can. Great experiences will follow, as will truly memorable images. Only then can your dreams be realised. I believe in the notion that we can heal the world one photo at a time. As long as our intentions are pure and selfless, you'll find most folks you approach will sense your sincerity, appreciate the interaction, and feel complimented by your attention. Your camera should not be considered as a barrier between you and your subject. It's a passport that allows you to enter into worlds and lives outside of your normal, everyday experience. Of course, until you get used to your camera and become fluent in how to use it quickly, it will remain a barrier. So that will be a challenge in the early days, but a challenge that must be overcome. Invasion of privacy. This can be as much an issue for the photographer as it can for the potential subject, and it can definitely be a limiting factor when it comes to the photographer approaching people. Be aware that there may be legal problems associated with photographing someone in a private place, for instance their home. Public places like parks and public events like protests, Mardi Gras, etc. are usually safe, providing you photograph in a way that doesn't interfere with, belittle, or obstruct the movement of your subjects and others. For further clarification, you should refer to the Copyright Council in your country, local professional photography institutions. In Australia, there's the Australian Institute of Professional Photography, and there are similar organisations in US, England, New Zealand, France, etc. And finally, it's always worthwhile seeking legal advice from someone appropriately qualified. Actually, there are many public events at which people are literally falling over backwards to have their photographs taken. In Melbourne, where I live, I can think of Melbourne Cup Day, Oaks Day, 2 major days in the horse racing carnival. There's various fancy dress events. There's the Sydney Mardi Gras, etc. It's not unusual for people to spend a lot of money on clothes or costumes for such events. They may also have consumed a more than average amount of alcohol and as a consequence may be in a more gregarious mood, and as such will enjoy the process of being photographed. Such events provide great opportunities for a whole series of interesting and dynamic photo essays. Trust your intuition. Most of us don't have an outcome in mind when we're out in the world making photos. And that's okay. Just make your photos and over time, let them speak to you about who you are and what you're about. This is a major part of the editing process. Editing is not just checking for sharpness and exposure. It's there to help you work out what it is you do best. Then you separate those images from the less successful ones and you ask yourself the serious questions. What am I saying through these pictures and what does that say about me as a person? Your mission statement or artist statement will follow, should you decide to clarify and tell the world what your photography has allowed you to discover about yourself. I use one on my own website. It's the sort of thing that you might see if you go to a fine art photography exhibition. So as well as the prints on display, there might be a page on the wall or in a catalogue accompanying the exhibition that talks about the artists, not just their bibliography, but talks about them and their concerns, what they're about, and what motivates them to make the photos they do. It's good to formalise this by writing it down, but at the very least you should think about these sort of things when you're getting towards the end of your editing process. I feel it's really, really important because it'll tell you who you are, what you are all about, and why it is that you do what you do. So thanks for joining me on this little adventure, folks, dealing with the notion of how to approach photographing strangers. I'm Glenn Guy, your travel photography guru, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Bye for now.